Welcome to AOL. Welcome to AOL Underground.
Would you please state your handle and the years you were active on AOL?
7 years active, starting in 2002, I believe, up until 2005 or seven, somewhere around there. A lot's happened there, but yeah, it was a good 5 year stretch.
Nice. So when did you first get a computer?
2 years prior to that, I had a 50 megahertz, 56K modem, Pentium. Actually, it wasn't even a Pentium; it was something before that. Some guy at the job that I was at sold it to me for like peanuts. It actually had DOS on it. I had to do some upgrades at Best Buy in order for it to get Windows 95 installed on it.
And then did you start on AOL or were you directly on the internet or what?
Well, yeah, the ISP that back then was AOL, but coincidentally, it wasn't of my service. I actually helped my aunt get online with AOL. The computer that I had at the time, I sold it. I actually gave it to her because I just didn't have any use for DOS. So when we got Windows 95 on it, and I discovered AOL, that was it. The love affair started.
Nice. So did you have your own account the first time you got on it?
The first time, like I said, I was using her account. I actually got into the programming scene. I was using AT&T with the DSL line. That's when I first really got into the AOL, and that's when I had downloaded AOL Instant Messenger. That's when I started to get to know, the scene.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the scene, like how you found it, what happened?
I was on house arrest for a drug trafficking charge. I bought myself a laptop, and I was on DSL. And being in that scene, you can't get any dates. So I got into the chat rooms. That's just to look for chicks. So that's my first encounter with AOL. I was just searching around and and that's how I found that. Yahoo was secondary, but AOL interested me more because of my previous experience with it.
And did you find any chicks?
No, there was just a bunch of goofballs on there that were punning people out of the rooms. That's what started my interest into the programming world.
So no chicks, just a bunch of nerds.
Bunch of nerds in there, kicking guys out. And there was this one guy in particular named Neil. That was his screen name. I had some fuzzy screen name back then. I can't even remember what it was. He kept kicking everyone out. So I was interested in how he was doing it. So I sent him an instant message and he crashed my whole computer. And I was really interested in what he was doing. He wouldn't give up any information on what he was doing. I didn't know anything about programs, so for kicks, he just kept crashing my computer every time I asked him. So I had to strategize. One way or another, I wanted to know what he was doing. I pretended to be a girl and I promised him nudes in exchange for what he was doing. He wouldn't budge until I sent him something. So I, went all over the internet and I found some nudes and I sent it to him. So he fell for it. And that's when he told me he was using AIM filter made by Robbie Saunders. I was clueless. I didn't know how to set it up or anything like that. So he showed me how to do it. And once he did, then I revealed to him that it was a guy the whole time. I had to create a whole nother screen name to do, to put the charade up. But he was impressed. He was a man, nobody's ever fooled me. So we became buddies and he started letting me in on more things, and brought me more into the scene. And when I got AIM filter on my hands, that's when I was like, I have to know how this works, because I was always the person that liked to deconstruct things. So I scoured the internet looking and looking and looking, and I found Robbie's website and I heard him read he was talking about Visual Basics. And when I saw it, it was just Greek to me. But I dedicated myself 12 hours a day, every day, until I taught myself how to program.
You tricked him. And then he's like, let's be friends.
Well, the thing was, he was impressed that I was able to keep up the charade for that long, to find nudes and to talk to him as if I was a female. So the fact that I guess that I tricked him was what impressed him.
The social engineering. That's crazy.
Exactly. So you could say that it was an early phase of it because it's basically what I did, not knowing that's what I was doing to him. I just wanted to get information. But, after reading about Kevin Mitnick and, other people like that, I'm like, wait a minute, I was doing that.
So you found Robbie's website, and what did he have any source code on it? Is that what it was? Did he have, like, give you source code or
Actually,
what?
no. At the time, he didn't. He had just created his web form, and he would keep people in the loop about his updates, what his next project was going to be. I was actually amazed because he was 13 years old at the time. I was like, wow, 13-year-old kid's doing this. So then he did release it on Planet Source Code. So when I downloaded it, like I said, it was just, I'm like, I got to learn this. I got to learn this. I got to learn this until I made a first functioning program that all it did was download images from a given website. So that was like my first program. I was like, well, now I know how to do this. I learned how to work with sockets. So the transition was actually easier than I thought it was after I learned the syntax, the language, and the logic to it, the math. When I first created my first program, it was an API based program, something that would send messages to the messenger. And during that time, that's when I met Xeon. That was his handle back then. And gifted programmer, really gifted. We would chat it up every night and, talk about how great these programs were. And he actually created the first XOR login for AIM outside of developers.
What is that?
The way AIM filter worked was basically a proxy. Okay, so you would log in with your AIM messenger through AIM filter, and AIM filter communicated with the servers. So they would send commands, the crash commands and anything like that. So that's how it worked before. Robbie Saunders didn't think logging into a AOL Instant Messenger was possible. XOR is just an encryption type. It was very simple. So he figured it out to log in. Then in turn, Robbie needed help because he wanted to get MD5 login, which AIM switched to. My friend Xeon was the one that helped him. He cracked the code on how to get it done. But then it was a whole thing. He took credit for it. Xeon didn't get the fame, but me and him continued to be friends. And then once he got the login done, that was it. That's when I took off. And he pretty much told me what he did. I replicated it, and then we would search for hours for exploits. And he would find one, and then I would find one, and then I'd come up with these ideas. And then that's when I started to learn how to make my own websites. So I had to learn HTML, CSS, web hosting, all this other stuff. You know what I mean? And like I was doing it just for fun. I wasn't really trying to like make a career out of it. It was just something to do while I was on house arrest. But I got so involved in it, and I didn't want to do anything else but that. That was it. I went to bed and I woke up with AIM in my head, finding exploits.
That's crazy. Hold on, can we take a step back? So I know what XOR is. It's like flipping the bets, right? What were you XORing?
The password encryption to the AOL Instant Messenger before MD5. The password encryption on AOL Instant Messenger was basic until I think it was around version 4.5 or 4.8. I can't remember exactly which version it was, but they switched to MD5. That ended the old form of login. So, but my friend Xeon, like I said, my buddy was the one that cracked it. Robert Saunders actually made the first full-blown AOL Instant Messenger socket. We'll give him credit with that. But my friend Xeon was the one that actually cracked the password login, the protocol to actually log in.
Okay, and then what is AIM filter?
It's the program that Robbie Saunders made. It acted like a local proxy. So you would change the settings in AOL Instant Messenger, right? Instead of going to the normal port to connect to AOL, which was 5959, you change it to the local server that which was that's what AIM filter was basically a local server. You would connect to that, and it would interface for you to the AOL networks, so that it would have these special commands that you would put in so that you can crash the other person's computer.
Oh, okay. So it's like an intercepting proxy. It would see the request and then it would modify it, kind of like Scapy or something like that.
Yeah, it would modify the packets.
Okay, or like Burp Suite today if you like automated it or something.
Yeah, like for instance, an exploit that I can't remember the guy that created it, but it wasn't Robbie Saunders. It was an exploit where you would send a corrupted packet for a file request. You would send a request to someone that you want to send them a file, and it would crash the other person's computer.
What kind of crash? Like a blue screen or like freeze the computer?
This actually it crashed the kernel. I don't know why AOL Instant Messenger would use that dynamic link library, but when you would send a corrupted packet for a file request, it would cause a kernel crash on the other user's end, and it would just make your computer reboot. Yeah, that's the guy. That's the crash that the guy kept hitting me with. So, I thought I thought he destroyed my computer when he did that. But it was all in fun and games.
Okay, and so that first of all, aim filter is a really good name for it. I like that. So you said you were finding exploits as well.
Yeah, so like after I learned how to make my first program, the next step in this whole process was to be able to do basically what Robbie did, to make a program where I could crash someone else's computer for fun, not cause any damage, but just for fun, or punch someone out of a chat room, something like that. My friend Zion was the one that introduced me to packet sniffing. So that's when I started being proficient in reverse engineering. So that I would stay up all night with that. Once I learned the login sequence, the protocol, how to send packets correctly, I guess you could say I already had a knack for creating user interfaces. So I think the style of the programs that I made and what they did is what captures people's imagination, and I guess that's why I grew a fan base that I didn't even know I had.
So what did you do with like your interface? It was interesting.
Well, I mean, if you look at them, the graphics that was on it on your website, you have several of my programs on there. Like Invader was one of them. It was my idea to log in multiple accounts and send a bunch of you know instant messages to a person to overwhelm the system to be able to crash it. I can't remember anyone else besides me doing that. I think that's why I became so popular. It's because that's, I guess, you could say, was innovative to do something like that, to log in multiple accounts. I'm not saying that I was the first one that created it. I just don't remember anyone else doing it.
Wait, is this through AIM or AOL?
It was through AIM.
Like, so would you be simultaneously logged into multiple accounts, or you would just like log into one, send a message, then log into another one, send a message?
I would create 50 accounts, AOL Instant Messenger accounts. It was just so easy to create accounts back then. And then my software would log all of those accounts at one time. So that if I sent a message to one person and I had 50 accounts, you would get 50 messages at once in one shot. The most popular method on there, I called it the combo crash. So what it would do, it would send every single request that AIM had in one time: a chat request, a file request, instant messenger, a buddy icon request. Anything that you could do to send a request to another user, that's what that method did. And when you did that, if a person had a computer that wasn't fast enough, it would either blue screen them, or it would freeze up the computer so bad that you had to reboot.
Nice. Yeah, that reminds me of like the AOL days where you'd like, I think you'd send the instant message and then you'd send like, I think it was like a room invite or something, and you could keep alternating them to crash it. But yours is like on a whole nother level. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to take credit for something I didn't do. I just personally don't remember. And I was there when that scene really got started. Anyone doing that, but if they did, they didn't do it at the level that I did. But it was one of many programs I made. You know what I mean? I actually made up a local proxy, same thing as AIM Filter, but a little bit different. I actually made private little client that would log into the AIM Messenger and do the same things they would do, but it would also have the exploits on it, changing passwords, creating screen names. It was a bunch of programs that I had.
Wait, what was the goal with this besides kicking people off?
Me, it was learning. It was finding out how to make things work. So like for the longest time, I couldn't send uh, a chat invite. So messing around with it, I was short a couple of packets. Well, it ended up that when you sent it that way, it would crash you. So that was my first bona fide exploit, was the chat invite exploit. The second one was actually, I actually impressed myself with it. And again, Robbie Saunders stole the idea from me, and tried to take off with it. But everybody knew it was me that created it. So, do you remember in AOL Instant Messenger, you can somebody messages you first, and they piss you off, and you can warn them, and if their warning levels got up too high, it would log them out.
Oh, I think I do remember. I mean, I forgot about it, so you mentioned it, but yeah, I think I do remember it. Yeah, the warnings.
Yeah, it was in the bottom left hand corner, right? If someone messages you first and they were pestering you, it was like I think the icon was like a lightning bolt. When you warn them, if they got to a level there was, I think it was like 90%, it would log you out automatically, and you couldn't log in for hours. Looking at the packets, I saw that in order for you to warn someone, they have to send you a request first. Well, when I was looking at the file request packet, it's almost exactly the same as an instant message packet. So I was like, okay, in theory, if I send someone a file request, they can't stop it, because in order for the warning to work, you would have to send somebody a message, and you would have to reply to it. Once you reply to it, then the warning button comes alive, and then you can warn them. But in the file request, you didn't have to accept it because your settings automatically let you accept the file request. So when that happened, I saw that I could send a warning to someone. So the method I came up with: send them a file request, and the receiving client would automatically respond as if it accepted the request. So once it did that, I'm able to warn you. I was able to warn you to the point where I can just knock you off instantly, and you couldn't come back along for about 2 hours. You would have to do at least 10 of them successfully to get you up to 90, and that's it. And you would automatically be logged off.
Would the receiving user actually see that a file was being downloaded, or?
No, what happened is they'd see the file request pop up, but at the same time, you would see your warning level go up. So it was they were confused. They didn't understand what was happening to them. I thought it was funny, but I shared this with my buddy Zion and with Robbie. But what Robbie Saunders did, he found out that if you send a buddy icon request, it would send almost the exact same packet as sending an instant message and a file request. It was the same packet header. So in theory, you were able to do the same thing, which he did. Mine was called the file request warn, and he called his the buddy icon force warn. But it worked the same way. He just took my idea and just used it somewhere else.
I guess technically, then he could say it was his, but if the packets are very similar in the inception of the idea.
Oh yeah, well the idea of of warning someone without them having them physically accepting the requests, that was my idea. But him seeing that the buddy icon request, that was his idea. Because when I told him that when you send the file request, the packet is almost the same as an instant message, he was like, well, the buddy icon is the same, so it should work there. So yeah, that was his, but the idea to look for it was mine.
Did he give you any like props or anything, or any
Of
shout
course
outs?
not. No, no. That's why me and Zion are friends to this day, because we weren't like that. You know what I mean? We didn't look at it as competing against each other. We looked at it as us competing against AOL. And like I said, we weren't like, we didn't hate AOL. We loved AOL. It was just fun, to be able to do things that other people couldn't do.
Yeah, right on. So was there any other exploits or anything you found?
There was one. So when they upgraded to AIM 6.0, it was called Triton, I believe it was. They had a feature where if you were friends with someone, you can instantly send them a file. But if you manipulated the packet, the file would exist, it would pop up on the desktop and not in a folder. I would send that request hundreds of times, and then your desktop will be flooded with files. So you get to sit there for 2 days deleting files without deleting sensitive stuff. I think that was the last one.
It would save the file to their desktop?
Yeah. So like, when you accept a file transfer, there was a specific file in your documents where AIM would save those files that you accepted. But I found a way that you would manipulate the packet that it would bypass that, and then it would force it to save on the desktop. So if I sent an image file, there would be like 100,000 of that image file replicated all over your desktop.
What if the file already existed? Would it overwrite it or rename it?
Well, when you create a file on Windows, even to this day with the exact same name, it would just number it. Icon one, icon two, icon three, icon four. It would just number it. It wouldn't overwrite. It was just create a copy of it over and over again. Other than that, um, I was basically focused on making my websites, making tools for AIM. But the claim to fame of my programs was AIM Invader. That one's the one that I was constantly updating, constantly adding things to it, and it was, I guess, it was the favorite of the. Like I said, I didn't even know I had a fan base until I actually put a hit counter on my website. When I saw I was at 2 million hits, and 100,000 unique hits in 3 months, that's when I understood the scope of it. I didn't think that many people were paying attention to me, to be honest with you.
That's some serious traffic, man.
Like I said, I didn't know until I put that stuff up there. But then when I had to pay the piper, house arrest eventually finished, I had to do my time for the drug trafficking. When I got out, I, started talking to my buddy again, Zion, and he was like, "Oh my God, where have you been?" And I was like, "Man, this is what happened." He goes, "Dude, do you understand how popular you are?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Everyone's been going crazy looking for you." I'm like, "Are you serious?" That's when I started seeing different websites, people putting up my programs, doing dedications. "Oh, man, you inspired me, this and that." I'm like, I didn't even know that I had that much influence on people until after the fact, after I disappeared.
That's crazy, man. It's like kind of like artists or whatever. They unfortunately for a lot of like the Van Gogh and stuff. Like they think nobody likes them or whatever, and they die, and then like years later, everyone like discovers their work. But at least you got to be there, right? To find out like people discovered it, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's funny how it works because along the way, you start to meet random people, and little by little, the better you are at what you do, the more you start to meet people that are at that same level. So, I became friends with a guy named Camel. Camel was the guy he was part of the group that hacked Paris Hilton's phone to get her contacts. You remember when that happened a long time ago?
Yeah, yeah. Camo was actually on an earlier episode.
We're buddies back then. He was the one that actually got me my screen name for me. He was like, you want sevens? I'm like, yeah. He was the one that got it for me before he disappeared. There was another guy in that group called Atomics. He's a really good hacker. He knew a lot of stuff about Unix. Everything that I knew that I've learned about Unix was from him. A lot of the graphic art that was on AIM Invader, he did. He was the one that showed me how to work in Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop. I didn't know anything about it. He introduced me to a very skilled guy. Like anything, I'm like, okay, this is something else to learn. So I started learning it, and I got better at it. I wasn't as good as he was, with graphic arts. It wasn't my thing. My thing is more technical. But then I started making my own designs, for websites, for user interfaces, and for my programs, stuff like that.
Hold on. So where did you hang out? Was it, as you said, Atomics? Where did you hang out with him and Camo? Was it like a specific room or?
These guys like working in the shadows because of what they did. So they would just randomly, hit me up independently on the messenger. Hey, what's going on? Let's do this and that. And then through Camel, I met another guy that was part of a hacker group called Cryogenics. Cryogenics were the ones that hacked Comcast. They were the ones that redirected the name server. I don't know if you remember that. That was some time ago.
No. Can you talk about that?
Guy named Kevin Black back then. He got into the name server where Comcast had their names registered. So he just redirected the name servers of Comcast.com to another website that said, you've been owned. That was all over the news. I freaked out. I'm like, why did you give me a shout out to that? I don't want nothing to do with that. Are you crazy?
Wait, your name was on it?
Yeah, it says a crowd, something cryogenics. It's on the internet. It's still on the internet, as a matter of fact. Says something cryogenics. Shout out to a couple of people, the people that were in cryogenics, and then my buddy Xeon, because I introduced Xeon to them, and then me at seven. And when I saw that, And then when I saw it in the news, I was freaking out. I didn't want to get on the computer for a while. Comcast actually had a sense of humor about it. They didn't get into their systems or nothing, and they didn't hack Comcast themselves. All they did was redirect. They hacked into the registrar. I can't remember what company it was, and they just redirected the traffic for a day.
Yeah, I could see that. Still, it's funny. So, are you looking back on it? Your name was on the hack.
After I got out, I couldn't go back to a 9 to 5 job. You know what I mean? So it's like I have all this wealth of knowledge. I learned how to program. There's got to be a way for me to monetize this one way or another. I started making programs for sale.
So wait, so you programs to sell? You said.
Yeah, yeah. I was putting, I created a little website, started selling programs, just scrapers, posters, stuff like, small stuff. Mind you, you think the adventure is over, but it's not. It was just getting started. People, that knew me from back in the day, hey man, I know this guy that would be interested. I let him know who you are, that you can make him this program. He's on this web forum. I'm like, okay. So me and the guy end up talking. He asked me to make him a scraper for some dating site. No big deal. So I made it for him. He says, hey, I would like to put you on salary. I need you to make me this program. I'm like, okay. Basically, what he wanted was uh, a cracker. And I'm like, okay. But it was for Facebook. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. He used the cracker. Then I made him another program that would post ads on the wall. This was like more or less in the infancy stages of Facebook. After about 6 months of doing that, he got a cease and desist from Facebook.
If wait, was it because he was cracking people's accounts and posting ads on the wall?
Yeah, the fact that he was using other people's accounts is what they were pissed off about. I like I said, I didn't know anything about spam cam or anything like that. I was just trying to make money online. I didn't know anything how spam cam actually worked.
Wait, what is that?
So spam cam is a set of laws that the federal government come up with, that things that you're not able to do on the internet that they consider illegal spam. Basically like unsolicited emails, uh, text messages, but then they added in, you know, commandeering someone's account to post ads on their account, which is what he was doing with my programs. And that was the end of that. But then I ended up meeting another guy that I was doing software for that was doing webcams, low key stuff, nothing crazy. So I was doing pretty good with that for 2 years. But, I was living the high life. I was making really good money. You know what I mean? And the reason part of that was because of what I'd done and the experience I had in AOL. You know what I mean? All the programs that I made, you know, was my background to help me get this job. Because he was like, hey, man, I was a fan of yours too. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, man, I've always wanted to work with you. Now we can make money together. So, that's how the world works. It's just crazy. So, 2 years working with him, all of a sudden, I get raided by the FBI. I didn't know what it was. My head was swimming. I just didn't know what it was. I'm like, was it the Comcast thing? I had a buddy of mine that was robbing banks out in Arizona. I thought maybe they think that I'm hiding money for him or something. When I saw the search warrant, it was electronic. And that's when it hit me. Had to do with Facebook. Basically, to make a long story short, what they wanted was they didn't want me. They wanted him, a guy named Adam Grubez. Facebook came after him. And at the time, it was the biggest lawsuit in the history of spam, $873 million. It's all over the internet. Where the guy Adam Grubez was reveling in the publicity, but he wasn't the one that made the program. I was the one that did it. So when I got raided, the current guy I was working for with the webcams totally freaked out and says, I don't want nothing to do with you. He was actually really good friends with Whitey Cracker. They partied together in Vegas a couple of times. Now I was basically, I'm like, okay, now I'm a freelancer again. So now I got the FBI looming over my head about this. They wanted me to basically entice him to come in because he's from Canada, to come to America, wear a wire, the whole thing, and I didn't want to do it. During that phase, I guess they were deciding on what to do with me. I had to find other work. I started meeting other people, and again, the only reason I was able to get these jobs is because they knew of who I was back in the days with AOL. And it was always the same thing that said to me. It was like, hey, man, I was a fan of yours. You make great programs. I would download them all the time. That was basically my application to all these jobs. They just knew who I was and they were fans of mine. And that's the reason I was able to get work. It's a lesson. And I'm going to tell you why, because in the end, when the FBI saw that I wasn't going to cooperate with them, they decided to charge me with conspiracy to commit email fraud. That's what they hit me with. I couldn't get a way out of it because the way the federal government works, right, depending on the district that you're in, and mine was in the Northern District of California. Mind you, I'm from Florida. I had to fly out there just to get sentenced. My court was in San Jose. My lawyer said, listen, because you had this drug charge under 10 years, you're coming in with points. You're going to have to do time. I'm like, are you serious for this? So, I was pissed, but there was nothing I can really do. They were trying to give me 4 years. So I had to do 18 months. And it wasn't in Club Fed either. I had to go to a meeting with the big boys. So here I go again. I'm gone. And now I'm in there contemplating my future. What am I going to do now? How am I going to move forward? How am I going to find work? So the only reason I took the plea, and I told my lawyer specifically, I cannot be barred from the computer from making money because this is how I make money. I've been making money on the computer for the past 8 to 10 years. He can't tell me that I can't be on the computer and not make my money. So that was part of the stipulations of me taking the plea. I did my time. I got out, and dude, I didn't even finish my halfway house. I already had another job lined up because of the same thing. But now I was the Facebook guy. Oh, you were the one that did that. Now I really want to work with you.
What? Well, yeah, also probably because you didn't wear the
I didn't
wire and all.
snitch.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
I didn't
okay.
snitch. You know what I mean? So on top of being skilled, I guess for a lot of other people was a no-brainer. That's when I understood that when you ask the universe for something, depending on how bad you want it, you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice to get it. And when I first started making programs on AIM, I would stay up at night, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I would say to myself, I swear to you, it was almost like a mantra. I want to be the best programmer on the internet ever. And it turns out that I'm one of the best at what I do. But I had to make the sacrifices to get there. And the universe is going to make you sacrifice it, whether you like it or not, depending on how bad you really wanted it. But I knew that when I was sitting in that cell, I knew that this was part of it. I was like, okay, I'm suffering now, but I'm going to be okay later. And I finished my sentence in 2015. I've been programming and making money programming ever since. Pay my taxes. My job is fully legit, but it's all due to me buying myself a computer and trying to figure out how this guy crashed me on AOL Instant Messenger chat room and me wanting to know how he did it and me getting this interest on making my own program. That's how it all started. AOL got me to where I am today.
That's great, man. That's an awesome. It's like the butterfly effect. It's so weird. If that guy hadn't kicked you off and you hadn't been like, what's going on here? Like you would have gone a totally different direction, right?
If I would have hooked up with some chick on AOL, you know what I mean? Like what my intentions were, me and you wouldn't be having this conversation. I just happened to pick one of the chat rooms that this guy was terrorizing, and I was one of the ones that he abused online, crashing my computer. But my interest kicked in. I wanted to know how he did it. I was that kid that when I was small, I would take my radio apart because I wanted to know how it worked. I'd look at the circuit board, you know, the amplifiers, the speakers, and I would want to modify it. That was me. I've always been that way. I've always been curious about technology. So, but that day, technology wasn't on my mind. A woman was. That guy crashing my computer is what basically opened the door, and I walked through it.
When you were getting these jobs or talking to people, were you using like a certain, like, how are you communicating? Was it like through a web form?
No, AOL was still around, so they would call, they would message me through, you know, my screen name, which was Sevens, Sevens. But then Skype came around, and AOL was transitioning into something that none of us from back in, from the old days, we didn't want anything to do with it anymore because of what they were trying to do. We jumped onto Skype. And then that's where I met most of the guys that I did business with.
Okay, so you were like on Digital Gangster and stuff.
Yeah, I had a name on there. It was seven something. I just can't remember what it was.
Is Xeon the only one you keep in touch with, or?
Him and like two other guys. Funny, I found Robbie Saunders on LinkedIn
Oh yeah.
accidentally. I was doing something on there, and I'm like, is that the Robbie Saunders from back in the days? I'm like, it looks like him. So I messaged him, and sure enough, it was. So we chopped it up for a bit, and then that was it. That was sometime last year.
Is he a programmer or what's he doing?
He's somewhere I think in Sacramento. He's working for some software firm. So yeah, yeah. And my buddy Zion, he's in the Midwest. He's also working for a software company. So all three of us, ended up working in software.
Nice, all self-taught, right?
Yeah, yeah. Robbie, I got to give him this. He was really talented. He was 13 years old when he first started. He's I can call him a prodigy because it's basically what he was. He was really intelligent, and self-taught. And my buddy Zion also, and me. But me and Zion became close because we our outlook on AOL was the same. So that's what we had a lot of things in common, even though we didn't think we did. But you know, we had. It's funny. I actually got him his first programming job with the guy that I did the webcams with.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's insane that a hobby turned into a resume, basically.
That's nothing. So you're still making programs today?
Oh yeah, when I'm finished this here, I got projects I got to finish.
Now, is it still Visual Basic?
No, C sharp.
Yeah, so kind of. I was like, it was kind of sad. I remember when like VB like went away, and it's like I guess I'll learn C#.
The thing was with me was sockets, and VB6 couldn't really handle secured sockets, so that's the reason why I had to transition over to C sharp.
Did you find yourself trying to dim variables and stuff for a while in C#? That's like kept happening to me.
It's funny. For the first 2 weeks, yeah, but I actually learned the syntax pretty quickly. It was a pretty smooth transition for me to get into C sharp. But for a while there, for 2 weeks, yeah, it was like almost like amnesia. Like I'm like, okay, hey, stop. You don't need to do this anymore. You need to go and forget that. But yeah, the big thing was the curly bars. You know what I mean? To enclose the code. That was the big thing for me. Because back then when .NET first started, it didn't do it for you automatically. You had to do it yourself. It was a nice little adventure, but I caught on to it pretty quickly.
Nice. And so has your code improved from your AIM Invader days?
Yeah, it's night and day. You wouldn't. I mean, the style of it and everything. It's just I evolved with time. With this, nothing's going to stay the same. And I've noticed that the only constant in life is change. So if you're not willing to adapt, you're not going to be useful in the technology world.
Yeah, that's true. There's people who are still like ignoring Kubernetes and containers and all of that. And it's like, you can only do that for so long.
Like, don't get me wrong, like every once in a while we'll get nostalgia, and I'm like, wow, these people still have my programs up, so I'll download them and keep them on a hard drive, and I'll go to Internet Archive, look at some of my old websites, and we'll have like a bit of nostalgia for about a while, and then you know back to reality again.
Yeah, for real. Can you talk about some of your old websites? Because I think I browsed some of you had like some forums up and stuff, and you post your programs and
Yeah, so the first one was some real cheap domain name that this guy that wanted me to upload my programs to his website, aimfiles.com, guy named Peter. He was the first one that actually got me hosting. But when I actually got my own website, it was sevens.net. Ending with a Z, sevenz.net. That was my first website. I think as I started growing out of the kiddie phase of the AIM scene. I kind of wanted to get into more serious programming, more into like the black hat stuff. So that's when I created esotericcode.com. That's when I started creating programs that didn't pertain only to AOL. It was other stuff that that it did. Like there was one that I made that I don't know, you remember GeoCities, those cheap hosting websites, the free ones?
Yeah, and Angel Fire and all that.
Yeah, I created a program that would immediately eat up bandwidth, so it would knock your website down for a day. Stuff like that. Low key. That's what I kind of wanted to like not only focus on AOL. I wanted to do other things. So, but and the way your mind works, if sevens.net's still there, my thing is okay. Well, it's AIM based. But if I created a whole new name, in my mind, it was a whole different thing. So it set my mind to focus on other things, not just on sevens.net, but on esoteric code where I can do things that were a little bit darker.
Nice. It's funny, the GeoCities thing. It reminds me of kind of what you were doing before, where you're booting people, right?
Yeah, it was just, it's the same thing. Like some girl put up a fan page for Justin Timberlake when he first came out. So that was my testing site. When I got into the darker side of things, that's when I started meeting these serious hackers. You know what I mean? Like the guy that owned Dark Code of Python. I forgot the guy's name, but he got raided by the FBI for something he did. I wasn't around for it. Ferk Ferk was a good buddy of mine. That he was the first guy that I know that created a botnet. Some guy that was selling shoes online wanted to eliminate his competition, so he hired my buddy Ferk to DDoS his website. The guy got raided, and he gave up Ferk pretty quickly. Ferk ended up doing 5 years in federal for that.
That's so crazy that they come for the programmer, not the guy that like used it. I don't know.
That's what kills me. You know what I mean? Like so the way spam can law is this, the thing about it is it only exists in America. Spam is only legal in the United States. It's not legal anywhere else. So the way extradition works is in order for a country to extradite, the crime has to exist in both countries. Since there's no laws for spamming in Canada, they couldn't extradite Adam to the United States. That's why they were trying to get me to entice him to come over and wear a wire, which I refused to do.
That's nuts. But I mean, but your program didn't even spam, right? I thought it just cracked, or did it also spam?
No, it did both. It cracked and then it spam. But the thing is that it doesn't matter if I used it or not, which I didn't. He did. The fact that I knew about it, that alone is enough for a conspiracy charge. It's same tactics they use to take down the mafia. When they use RICO, anything like this. So, and they don't come after you unless they know they can get you. It was 18 months of my life. I figured that I had to give to the universe in order to have a future in what I asked the universe for years prior.
So, is there anything else you wanted to share today?
I mean, no, I mean that's just it. It's just like when I came across your website and I saw that you had some of my programs up there, I'm like, wow. And then Acid Drop has a lot of my programs. So yeah, it's cool that there's still a community out there that was try to keep that alive. And my buddy Xeon actually created an AIM server.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he reverse engineered, process of how a server would intercept and interact with a client. But he dropped the project, he uploaded the Planet source code, and then 3 years ago, somebody found his source code, updated it, revived it, and then started a whole community of AIM users with his source code.
Oh, that's crazy. Do you know what the community's called?
Phoenix AOL or something like that. The reason I didn't want to get involved with it is because of there were the people that were there were unsavory for me. So I kind of shied away from it. I didn't want nothing to do with them.
Fair enough. That's really cool that he brought it back, I guess. So he still has some nostalgia then.
Well, when I showed him somebody use his source code to create, to revive his server, he was cool. He was like, yeah, it's called Phoenix Vintage Messaging Reborn. So yeah, this guy, he's supposedly he's working on a server for AOL, so that you can go into the chat rooms like AOL those days.
The Nino project, they got an AOL 4.0 working, and then re AOL, they're now P3 OL. They had 3.0 working for a while. There's a few different folks working on it. It's cool. Love it.
If they can create half of what AOL was back in the days, I would be part of it. But I met the guy that was the lead, and the lead in the whole project. He was cool. It's just that some of the people that were there, some of them I actually remember from back in the days, and oh man, I was such a fan of yours, and he, I think he started a Patreon, and I'm like, listen, dude, do you know who I am? First of all, I shouldn't even be paying. Second of all, I should be the bait of why you should get people here in the first place. So this guy, I think his big brother was the one that was from the AOL days, and he was just fascinated with it. So a lot of the people that were on there were a bunch of script kiddies and posers. That's why they want to be part of it. Like I don't know who's on there now. That was a few years ago. But if I ran into buddies like Elixir or Dark Knight, a Rube, Nemesis, those were like my buddies back in the days. If they were on there, that'd be a different story. That's the AO story, man. I mean, that's the story, and it's funny. I never shared pictures with myself back then. I always kept myself anonymous. I guess like an air of mystery I wanted to have. Like I wanted to work in the shadows. I didn't care too much about facial character recognition. I wanted to work in the shadows. Like I said, I didn't think I was doing anything special. When AO went down, I didn't realize how many followers I had, and to this day, I just went to a wedding just last year and ran into a guy that I knew from the AOL days. Man, I was a fan of yours. I just download your programs. I'm like, holy cow, it's still happening. And I'm 50 years old.
That's nuts, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, it feels good that I had an influence on a few people's lives by the work that I did, So I don't think it was so mundane to look back at it now. At the time, I didn't think anything special of it. I've met a couple of guys that said that the only reason they got into programming and they're software developers now is because of the influence I had on them with my websites and programs.
Dude, that's nuts. If you didn't want to go find chicks online, none of this would have happened.
We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I'd be some regular schmo working some 9 to 5. Instead, I have a 2 screen monitor office that I'm working from home because of the skill that I taught myself.
That's great, man. Well, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Hack the planet. Hack the planet.
Welcome to cyberspace.